Welcome to the Peace is Possible podcast, a space for real talk on healing, leadership, and conscious change. I'm Eva Dalak, founder of Peace Activation and your host. Each episode brings you insights and tools to help you live and lead from a place of inner peace and ripple that peace outward. Tune in, reflect, activate. Subscribe whenever you listen to podcasts and visit peaceactivation.org to learn more. Welcome, Sharon. Welcome to the Peace is Possible podcast. I'm very honored to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Eva, for inviting me.
Sharon, can you please introduce yourself to our listener? I always like to allow the people to speak, to present themselves in their own word.
So the short introduction is that I'm the founder and the executive director of the Middle East Peace Initiative. The bit longer one is that I'm an activist and have been an activist since I was 14 and never stopped.
Beautiful. And that's how many years since you were 14?
Oh, wow. It's 40 years now. 40 years of activism.
And you still believe peace is possible?
I know peace is possible. It's not think. I know. I know that every conflict has to end in one way or another. And conflict ends usually in two ways, either complete annihilation of one side or an agreement. One, as it's even though we see what we see now, I don't believe that one is acceptable, and I hope one won't happen. And that only leaves us the other option. At the end, there will be an agreement. Some people will call it peace. Some people will call it ceasefire. Some people will call it peace, end of war or normalization. At the end, peace will be here. The question is just what is it that we can do in order to bring it closer, so there's less suffering before it happens.
Beautiful. So what do you call peace? What is peace for you? How do you envision peace?
I have a strong vision for the Middle East. For me, peace is not just between Israel and Palestine. For me, peace is peace in the Middle East. So the vision that holds me, or the vision that I hold, is a Middle East union that put emphasis on cities, not on states, where we collaborate on different issues, where we develop this Middle Eastern pride or West Asia, North Africa pride. I see trains all over the Middle East. I see education programs in rural areas, capacity building for the engineers of the very green energy facilities that we will have all over the Middle East. The Middle East can lead on so many things, and it's in our grasp. It is possible in my lifetime.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sharon. I heard the other day a reel from a person around the term Middle East, how it's actually a colonial perception on this region. What would be the name of this? Like, heading the Middle East Initiative, would you consider changing the name?
I really don't care, to be honest. The Middle East, there were times that I didn't say Middle East. I said WANA, West Asia, North Africa, just a description of where we are. But nobody understood what I'm saying. So be it, Middle East, even if it's colonialism, sometimes you can do reclaiming for a name, right? But we can call it differently. For us, we were thinking for the project of building the vision, we were thinking of the name Roya. Roya in Farsi, Roya in Arabic, Re'iyah in Hebrew. A vision. For me, what's more important is what's happening on the ground. How can we imagine? Can we actually put a picture of what regional peace looks like? So, and this picture is not just so we create a nice image, but it's to create movement towards something. You see so many people around the world and within the Middle East that are marching for something, but they don't have an end game. Where is it? Where's this point that we're going to? And if we have this point, can we plan how to get? Can we do a power analysis of what's stopping us from getting there? What are the obstacles? What is our strength? We already have so many good points, so many peace organizations in the region, so many civil society organizations, even where it's hard to have these civil organizations, civil society organizations working towards something. But sometimes it seems like with all these brilliant ideas that they're working without believing that it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I love the name of your podcast because the organization that I'm at, the Middle East Treaty Organization, we have a motto. We didn't plan to have a motto, but we do. And our motto is achieving the possible, where we put before the possible in brackets, achieving the impossible. Of course, it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Just put the in brackets, and then you have a responsibility. If it's possible, if it's not impossible, if it's possible, you have a responsibility to get there, to find the tangible path towards getting there. So I really liked that the name of your podcast.
Thank you, and I love I love your motto, like, and the notion of responsibility. I think the notion of responsibility is also at the heart of peace activation. That peace activation is all about not necessarily being peaceful or calm. I always explain that. I'm like, peace activation might actually trigger you. But to activate peace inside of me, it's also to learn how can I sit in the trigger and how can I take responsibility for what I'm creating, and that's including my emotion, my reaction, etc., and create an outer action that leads me towards what I'm seeking. And what I'm seeking is peace. And so what I'm seeking is also seeking me. And how can I create? I love what you're saying about creating a path that would lead me towards that. So tell us more about like who is behind Middle East Initiative, the Ru'ya.
So I'll start with what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
As an organization. As I said, I was a peace and human rights activist since I was very young, including several years in weekends, mainly in Gaza and in the West Bank. But when I heard about the Arab Peace Initiative, it triggered something in me. The understanding that whatever that it is that we're doing cannot be just on Israel-Palestine, that it will be very hard to make a movement, to make the shift that we need without making it regional.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, nobody really pushed the Arab Peace Initiative, which was really upsetting, not even the Arab states that signed on it, that kept. But for me, it was like I've seen the light, regional thinking. And we were a group of friends that actually were actually working towards on how to push the Arab Peace Initiative. But at the same time, I started a campaign for nuclear disarmament in Israel in 2007. And in 2007, to talk about nuclear disarmament in Israel seemed impossible because of ambiguity, because, I mean, I'm laughing sometimes that even for peace organizations and human rights organization and green organization, I became radioactive the minute I touched the forbidden topic, the taboo, with nuclear issues. But that actually gave me another motivation, dual motivation. One, there are so many organizations for peace in Israel, and nobody's talking about nuclear. And the reason is not to be unique, but because if we look at the history of conversations, regional conversations, after the Madrid Agreement, there were the Acres talk, arms control, I forgot the acronym, but it was the first time that were conversation between not just bilateral, but multilateral talks about possible peace in the Middle East. And one thing stood out, while we're not talking about nuclear weapons, the Arab states are obsessed with the fact that we have nuclear weapons. I mean, we don't talk about it, but they don't stop talking about our nuclear weapons. So ambiguity not just stopped us from talking about nuclear weapons, it didn't allow us to see how other perceives us with our nuclear weapons. And one thing that came out of Acres, or one reason Acres failed, was over this question: what should come first, nuclear disarmament or peace? So while the Arab states will say first we need to talk about everything, including these weapons, Israel wants to talk about everything that is not nuclear and leave nuclear at the end of the very long corridor. And it became the name, the long corridor. So for me, it was quite obvious that we can't leave it as this should come first or this should come first. We need to start working on it in parallel and create some kind of original collaboration, thinking, or conversation also about nuclear weapons, because it's not just about the existing nuclear weapons, it's also about the possibility that there will be a nuclear arm race in the Middle East. And we're still facing this possibility of nuclear arm race in the Middle East, which Israel won't be able to stop just by bombing. So when I started working on that, I found some amazing friends from Iran, from other Arab states, from the international community that wanted to think together, how come something that all the states in the world say that they want, a nuclear weapon-free zone in the Middle East, and there are many UN resolutions on that and so on, but still at the same time say impossible. We want it, but it's impossible. We're voting on it, but it's impossible. We keep voting on it every year, like 3 times, 3 different UN conferences are voting on it, but it's impossible. And it's also allowed states outside of the zone to use this stagnation in order to not move on their obligations on nuclear weapons. So basically, the weapons that we are not talking about in Israel are being something that is being not just discussed, but that stuck international progress on that, not because of us in this case, but because others are using us as a way to not move. And I found it fascinating. And at some point, we decided as a group to ask the experts, like really there are so many known experts on that and think tanks. It's like there's an abundance of them, not in Israel, but around the world, to write, and some diplomats, not just to talk about it, but to actually write a treaty. How will a treaty for the Middle East look like? How can Israel disarm and be sure that the other states are not getting nuclear weapons while it's disarming? And the answer we got was, it's impossible. The text was impossible. So we wrote a text, and we wrote a very comprehensive text. We called it the Draft Treaty for a Weapon of Mass Destruction Free Zone in the Middle East. And it was funny how angry the diplomats from the states that calling for that were with us. After they started the conversation in 1974, and in 2017, we introduced this text at the UN. And they were really angry. And the reason that they got angry was because they knew what's coming next. Now there's a possibility. Now there's a model that, by the way, they all read beforehand, but we never said who wrote it. So also as an organization, we decided no organizational ego. We didn't say who wrote it. We didn't say, we didn't put our name on it, and we don't send it just as PDF, but as a Word document. Take it, change it, do whatever you want. And we sent it to all the ministries in the Middle East from a British organization that said that it was written by experts from the zone and beyond. To make a very long story short, with some advocacy and roundtables, inviting these stakeholders to make the draft treaty better and better and better, not owning the draft treaty. In 2018, they already passed a resolution at the UN calling for a yearly conference on a weapon of mass destruction free zone in the Middle East. And it's based on our model. And since 2019, they meet every year in November in the UN, at the UN in New York. And they make progress slowly, but surely. All the states in the Middle East are there, apart from Israel. But the states in the room, unlike the conversation outside of the room, the states in the room are actually behaving amazingly. They're making a slow progress so Israel can join at any time. They take Israeli concerns, so they're not doing things in spite. And the decision was to make all decisions by consensus. So Israel doesn't have to be afraid to join because it will have a minority, a constant minority. It's enough that one state say no to one thing, and it's like a power of veto. We called the whole project, was called, every time we presented at the UN, every time we presented a new treaty, a new model, just to show that there's not just one model, there are so many models you can use. We called it achieving the impossible, achieving the possible. And it worked, and it's still working. And I believe that Israel will join that too, because Israel has everything to gain from thinking about what the model should be like and nothing to lose. Nothing to lose.
Interesting. You shared with us here is really a model for conflict resolution. It's like how to base how we design a process to make sure that the objection of any country are taken, the needs and concerns are taken into consideration so that we are ensuring the participation and it's a inclusive process. I'm wondering how, parallel to this, how is this making peace possible right now with what we are witnessing, with the genocide, with the destruction, the settlement in the West Bank, with the hostages not coming back? Like, how is your organization holding a vision for peace is possible in the midst of the chaos that we've been living in for the past 2 years?
It's not easy. I mean, I can't say that October 7 didn't, first it derailed our work, of course. I mean, if we thought that 2024 is the year where we are campaigning in Israel for Israel to join this conference, that was impossible. That was really impossible. It wasn't the right time for that. But it was the right time to look again at what is our power as civil society and what is our responsibility. I'm very sad to say that looking at that showed me how civil society is giving up its power in order to be righteous sometimes. I mean, you know how precious and under how much pressure civil society in Israel is working towards peace and towards the end of the war, of this war. But without the recognition and without the collaboration of peace movements around the world who are much bigger. So one of the things that I thought could be amazing will be to connect big organizations outside of Israel that marching for free Palestine and so on to the powers in Israel, for them to learn what are the methods that might work in Israel and to give feedback and to allow us inside Israel to be heard outside could have, I think, helped ending the war long time ago. So this was something that I tried to do because I am working in the international arena and failed. It taught me something for me that was very discouraging, that it seemed like too many people don't love the Palestinians in this case as much as they hate the Israelis. So one thing that it taught me was about the power of love too. But at the same time, I thought, what is it our responsibility? Can we stop this war without this help? No. Biden tried. Even Trump tried. Most of the world leaders calling on Israel to stop the war. We don't have the power, the real power to stop this war now. We do have the power to, first as civil society in Israel, to keep marching, to keep being heard, to keep calling on soldiers to stop going to Gaza, not just because of the Palestinians, but because of their own precious lives. But our biggest, the way I see it, the biggest responsibility we have is to start building on what we know that might work in order to make sure that this won't happen again. And when we're looking regionally, not to forget several things. One, that we're not just talking about the security of states, we actually have to look at the security of the people in these states. And if there's one thing I've learned in my activism, is that usually there's a huge gap between what the state calls the security of the state and the security of the people in the state. Usually it's even contradicting. So to look at all the streams of what is human security and start working regionally. For example, let's take something that is almost too simple in this case, and that's drinking water. We don't know how to face the fact that climate change says that there are going to be wars over resources in the Middle East because of drinking water. However, if the states would have decided to collaborate on just this issue, even in 5 years, we can have an achievement on something. So if you take 17 different streams of what human securities are, as the UN called them, the sustainable development goals, and you start thinking and bringing stakeholders regionally to have a plan of what they can achieve if the states agree, you can start building regional thinking and regional solutions that become the vision of why people might choose peace. At the same time, you have to map the obstacles, and you have to look at who profit from these wars, and not just to point at them, which is also helpful, but also to try and show how they can benefit from peace. So if what we managed to do with weapons of mass destruction that started a regional process, if we can do it on different processes, including security of states, including taking this regional approach of if the states, two states, or if the people in Sudan, or if the people in Yemen, if Israel and Palestine will agree on certain things, it will have a regional backing, an international backing. This is the very complex project that we call Roya. But we believe that if we can start doing that, the regional thinking, showing people that not just that they can have life, but to actually have a life worth living, that it might add an engine toward peace.
Thank you, Sharon. I'm wondering in this ru'ya, in this vision, in this ra'iyah, is this regional? Do you have people from the different places in the Middle East?
This project is at its beginning. I mean, if you look at the streams, then in weapons of mass destruction, we're already at the process itself.
Yeah.
It comes to different the other different streams. We're really at the diapers, but in our we're three directors from the region, so Iranian, Jordanian, and Israeli. And we do have a few people now from Yemen and Sudan, because we can't decide what are these things that they need in order to get this regional backing.
You have people from Palestine, Palestinian included?
Not directly. I mean, we did, but sadly not anymore. But we do work with other organizations that work on the ground. We are not going to be the one representing. We're representing a program and inviting. It's an invitation for those who have. So when it comes to the Arab Peace Initiative, we have expertise in-house, but we don't want to be those who decide together what might be the new Arab Peace Initiative that includes Iran, but to bring those who already work on that, like Land for All, like Combatants for Peace, those Israeli-Palestinian organization, like Gershon Baskin and I forgot his partner, Palestinian. No, not Aziz. Aziz is is Mao Zinon partner. I mean, we're not here to replace them, and we're definitely not there to.
It's just that it seems that it's interesting because I think were you at the Paris conference that brought together this the Palestinian and Israeli peace organization? I just feel like there's this parallel stream of peace organization that are working on theory, while in parallel this is happening. It's been 2 years. I read yesterday 700 days since October 7.
Yeah, 703 now. Yeah.
Now, so yeah, I guess I read it on Friday.
There are a lot of organizations, and sometimes they behave like they're compete with each other.
I know, and I think that's part of the issue, because what you mentioned before is like, if the peace camp in Israel was supported by the peace camp outside of Israel, maybe we will have a wider action. I really believe that it's like a cancer in a body. Like a cancer in a body will have different cells fighting each other until they get chemotherapy, or as we just heard from in another podcast I did with Zach Bush, unless we have natural remission. And how do we get that is really to understand what's the core issue, not what are the symptoms. And I feel like a lot of the peace organizations are patching on the symptoms and not really dealing with the core issue. And so unless we tackle the root causes of the conflict, and that's kind of in conflict transformation, because conflict, we'll always have conflict. It's not like tomorrow we're going to wake up and we won't have conflict anymore and we'll have peace and harmony. But how is this conflict is going to help us, support us to grow? Conflict is something that is natural, neutral, and necessary. How can we use that as an opportunity for redesigning a whole new world, a whole new way of living, a whole new way of being with each other in respect and integrity of oneself and the other? And so in such a world, imagining this world is hugely important, and at the same time, dealing with the concrete reality that is right now happening. And I feel there's such a disconnect between what's happening and what we're trying to create. How do you connect the dots? How can you connect the dots between what you're trying to create with a new vision for the Middle East, with Iranian and Jordanian, and how do you deal with the fact that the absence of Palestinian, and how do we create a new vision, actually, really, whether it's land for all, standing together. These are all organizations that are working together, but it seems like in Arabic we say bit hanumai. They're like I don't know even what's the expression in Arabic, in English. Anyway.
I think that if you look at some of the solutions that these organizations are offering, they're good solutions. I think that what's missing, and that's what we're offering to bridge, is a tangible path forward. As I said, it's not just about looking at the vision of how it looks. When you see the target of where you want to get, that's the time to create the path. Creating path forward is not just a hippie way of visioning. You start with setting objectives that are each of them is tangible, it's realistic, it's something that you can achieve and contributes to the overall goal that you want to achieve.
Give us an example of that to make it tangible for the listener.
Okay, so for example, if we are doing like I talked to you about water, for example, if you manage to bring water experts from around the Middle East to start a roundtable series where they just talk about solutions for water. And the prompt that you give them is, the governments have agreed already that they're going to collaborate. Whatever is decided here, they're going to collaborate. On this, they'll collaborate openly. And you get a plan from the experts on water, not on politics, just on water, how regionally they can create more desalination, what kind of energy they need, water saving, how to water plant underneath the ground and so on. They can come with a solution. Then you have one tiny part, but this part now is ripe for two major things. One, you push it on the governments that need this clean water, and all they need is to say yes to collaborating on that. And you start a regional project that make people start working together. And that's already, they see the other as human because they work together. But the important thing here is that you have one component for a very strong campaign to show the price. We're not just asking you to fight for peace, because people don't know how peace looks like anymore. They don't believe in it. They keep calling for it, but they don't believe in it. But clean water for everybody, that's something that is tangible. They can see it. At the same time, you're not just doing a campaign to push for peace. And let's talk about Israel. You're not just doing a campaign calling for peace using the same language, the old language that doesn't move people. We have to, and this is something that peace organizations, and I've been part of peace organizations in Israel since I was 14, now I'm 55, so 41 years. Campaigns were usually, peace campaign are competing campaign against other peace campaigns. The campaign in Israel that we're imagining, pending on fundraising, which is not easy, is going to be a bit different, because it's not going to be pure. It's not going to be for lefty ears. We don't need
Sharon,
that.
Sharon, I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, this whole podcast actually started because I had a conversation with Charles Ashton about what if war is as profitable. What if peace is as profitable as war? Where would we be? And I think what you're touching upon is peace has become a business, and peace organizations competing each other in Palestine and Israel. And it became that even the UN, to which you are a friend, I worked for a long time with the UN system. It's such a bureaucratic system that it forgot why it was actually born. I remember when I joined the UN, when I was doing my studies at the Sorbonne, and it was saying, it is in the heart of humans that hatred has started, then it is in the heart of human that peace, when we work for peace. It is from the Charter of the UN. And I think that what we haven't addressed up until now is how are we touching people's heart? You mentioned it earlier on around the love, the language of love. And I think in a previous podcast that I did with Aida, she was also speaking about the language of love. I think is the component of the heart, but also of like, war is profitable. People go to war because they make a lot of money out of it.
Yeah.
And so how can we make peace as profitable as war without losing the heart of peace?
Sometimes we have to give up on the heart. I'll explain what I'm saying, what I'm talking about here. When I imagine a campaign in Israel, I don't imagine a campaign just for the sake of a campaign. I want to win because winning means peace. And if, in order for me to win a campaign for peace, I have to identify those who are the obstacle for peace, that I think in the power analysis that you do before every step you take, because as I said, it's not just TP, it's also with a program. You do a power analysis. Those obstacles that are not going to be moved or changed have to become the bad people of the campaign. So, for example, if you look at the settlement movement, and I'm not talking about those who live in the big settlements in the cities, I'm talking about those who vote for Ben Gvir and Smotrich. We're not going to change their mind, just like we're not going to change the mind of people from Hamas. They're the same thing. So just like Hamas is not going to be the good person in the campaign, but Palestinian people are, the same will be with the settlement movement. If we can't isolate them and make them a lesser threat by targeting them, then we might lose. So even though the language is the language of love, the thinking is thinking of love, we have to be willing to get our hands a bit dirty with the negative campaign. And it's the same from those who profit from war. One of our streams of work, we call it soft landing. And we even found some international experts from the Club of Rome that are willing to do a roundtable with us to start exploring this part. So many companies and entities are benefiting from this war. So we need to look at them, we need to map them and to see what is it that we can offer them that with a little change, they can start profit from peace. But if they are not going to, they are excellent material to show the vast majority of the people in the Middle East that their suffering is these people benefit. So you have to be willing to have a campaign that is not just bleeding heart lefty, just language of love. People ask me if I'm a pacifist, and I said, no, I'm not a pacifist. I'm against being a pacifist because some things are worth fighting for. Peace is worth fighting for, not with violence, but definitely worth fighting for.
Interesting, because for me, I said in another podcast that fighting for peace is like fucking for virginity. And so it's really fight. The more we're gonna fight, the more we're gonna increase the same field of like attacking. And
I
but I feel
totally
like we
agree
need to
with you.
agree. Like what I love about what you're saying is like creating what I refer to is we need to create a pathway for peace. And as you mentioned, people don't know how peace feel like. They misunderstand peace as being peaceful. But I've never actually been in a peaceful state, not in Palestine, Israel, or actually even not in the world. So how would it feel for us who are in this midst of this crisis? How would it feel to be at peace? How would peace taste? How can we touch peace? How can we make it tangible? You're talking about tangible, concrete action. What are the concrete action that each individual can take responsibility? And that includes the settler, that includes the soldier, that includes the different people, because I feel like each one of us has a piece of this piece. We're not all going to do the same thing. At the same time, we need to understand that each action is going to build on each other. And if we're not competing, then we might actually eventually get to the same place. And the same place doesn't have a color, a religion, an identity. It has a oneness of humanity.
When we ask for help from, when we talk in front of people and we say piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
And one example is a person that, an architect that is South African living in Switzerland. And he said, I really want to help. I really do want to help. But I don't understand, I don't know the Middle East that much, and I don't understand nuclear weapons or the conflicts in the Middle East, but I really want to help. And he said that he's working on, that he and his wife, both architects, decided that they stop just building buildings or planning buildings, but now they want just buildings that are self-sustained, that give something back to the land, not just take. And what I asked him was if he's willing to give the time to plan a Middle East Union building that not just will have a room for the states to meet, but will have kind of a regional school in it, a place for culture exchange, a place for special rooms with whiteboards all around for people to think creatively together about solutions, a room for mitigating when states don't agree with each other, and so on. Because I totally understand what you said by fighting for peace is like fucking for virginity. And maybe fighting is not the right word, fighting for peace. But it does feel like it sometimes. It's more like Sisyphus, walking uphill again and again and again, pushing a huge rock, struggling for peace, maybe.
Perseverance, I would say, persevere in the face
Yeah.
of challenges, not giving up, giving in, but not giving up. I feel like there's a lot of letting go and surrendering, at the same time standing our ground in a way that we don't stand in silence in the faces of atrocity, and speak truth to power, and make sure that we keep our humanity so that we can keep the humanity of the other. What you said earlier on, it's like people don't love necessarily Palestinian as much as they hate Israeli. That's a very strong word. And I feel like it's true that it's such a pity that right now we are equating Free Palestine with movement of anti-Semitism and the rise of anti-Semitism. And how can we, like yesterday, I was walking in here in Costa Rica in a trail, and I met a woman from California, and she said, oh, she thought I was French. She's like, are you French? I'm like, no, I'm Palestinian. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I say, why are you sorry? She's like, oh, I'm Jewish. And I just learned to say sorry, I'm Jewish as soon as I meet a Palestinian, because I want you to know that I'm not the states, and I'm not in agreement to what's happening. And I'm like, I know I have so many Palestinian and Israeli friends and Jewish friends around the world, and I know that the identity doesn't define, like the state doesn't define who the person is, and I know who you are in truth. And so I feel like this sorry that became automatic, like apologizing for our existence, and denying the existence of the other. Like some Israeli that have their heart closed because of what's happening, closing their heart on the existence of Palestinians, and the same for Palestinians, closing their heart for the existence of Israel. And I find like it's really important that we understand that we have a shared humanity, and how can we work actually together, like the organization that you mentioned, how can we work together towards the same goal, where our respect of each other and the integrity of our humanity is preserved.
I think one of the things that I want to try, because of this heartbreak of mine, I can tell you that at October 7 itself, I work with so many international organizations, and the whole day I was in shock. Yeah, right. I was in Israel. I was scared the whole day, and heartbroken. And I was heartbroken for both sides. I mean, we still didn't know what's going on with us, but I already knew that Gaza is going to get, I couldn't imagine this, right? But I thought another round of bombing was enough for me to be extremely upset about it. But at the same time, I found out that people that were my colleagues, people that were my friends, refused to acknowledge, even on the personal level, that I'm going through something on October 7th. They even send me pictures of some of my students, some of the volunteers send me pictures on October 8th of From the River to the Sea, Palestine Will Be Free, marching, and they thought that I'll be very proud of them to doing so. And it made me realize how people don't really see what's going on, but they're not also willing to see. And it took almost a year for us to be able to have a conversation on if I was on Zoom, and suddenly it was in one of the nights of the Iranian attack, and my house that didn't have a shelter, and there were actually missiles and anti-missile over my house, and the noise was horrible. I didn't have anywhere to go, but it was obvious that, I mean, something is happening, which if most of the people on this Zoom call were in London. If it would happen in London, I mean, people would go nuts, right? And I said, wow, that was scary. Someone said, it's not like in Gaza. And someone else said, no, the Iranians are not targeting cities. They're only targeting military. Right now, it was above my head. They actually could see it. I showed them from the window. It was like it's like a firework. And I couldn't say much, but it took me some time to think about how to react to all that and how to have this conversation. But since October 7th, and this is something that I realized way before, but since October 7th, I saw so many people coming at me. And I know that I've been an activist all my life. I go to the UN and the fellow activists from, some of them stopped saying hello to me. Or some of them feel that they need to tell me how many people died in Gaza since the beginning of the war. What they can't tell me is, where is Gaza? What are the borders of Gaza? What's the difference between PLO and Hamas? And why do they care about the Palestinians, but don't care at all about the 500,000 civilian death in Yemen with British weapons and under the coalition that they lead? I'm talking about British people now, right? And how come they care about the Palestinians but don't care about the Yemenis? And I'm not saying it just for the what about, but what is the motivation? What is the motivation? You care about Palestine, but you don't really learn about it. You care about Palestine very much. You dedicate time. People march every week without, what does it mean, Free Palestine? And I ask, okay, Free Palestine, what does it mean? What borders is for you Free Palestine? Is it a one-state solution? Is it a two-state solution? If they don't know, if they don't take the time, I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying too many, for comfort.
I think what you're speaking to is the hypocrisy of what's happening right now and the competition of victimhood and suffering. And there's the word that come to me is in French, the ras-le-bol, in a way that is being expressed in this. And I hear the hurt in what you're sharing. And I really like...
It's not a personal hurt.
Yeah, no.
How do we win if...
How we create a situation where we're all winning, I want to say. And I think it's not by denying the other person's existence or essence, and it's not by competing for who suffers more or competing who's the victim. But I think there has been a lot of justification for the Palestinian suffering on the basis of Israel's existence. And I think that's kind of the ras-le-bol that the international and the people that you're referring to are coming back to, because there has been this, like, I think October 7 was a wake-up call for Israel, but also for the whole world, because up until then, what was going on in the occupied territory wasn't mentioned. Nobody was referring to it. And I had in the previous podcast, Ida was saying, like, what happened is that for her, all the pain and the struggle that she was carrying alone now is being carried together. And I feel like, again, it's such a pity that it is on the expenses of some of this peace movement and at the expenses of people that really believe in peace and really want to achieve together a coexistence that is built on mutual respect and mutual humanity. And I think that's really key to understand, that unless we step out and see what's happening for what it is, and rather than putting it like riding the wave of Gaza to justify action that we didn't necessarily agree with before, but now we finally have opportunity to speak up and putting on it a label and really dealing with all the system of oppressions that we're combating. And speaking about all these different places where colonialism is an issue, and all the places where weapons of mass destruction is an issue, and it's not, and really expanding the situation from Palestine, Israel, not as the issue is in Palestine, Israel, but actually as a reflection of what's happening in the world. And I think in the beginning, I said Palestine and Israel are noble enemies that are coming to stage, really to the international stage, to kind of reflect back on where and how we lost our humanity. And if humanity is to prevail, it will be together. It will be in shared humanity and in shared, I want to say combat, even though I don't like this word, of how to create a new world, how a new pathway for peace are available for us.
Yeah, and also that's one of the reasons that when you asked me at the very beginning of this interview, what is the picture of peace at the end for me? It's city-based, municipality-based. That's where most of the funds should go. That's because this is the way to keep us humane, is in smaller communities. That's where we find our humanity, and that's where we see the other. I mean, you talk about global, we see it everywhere. You take a group of people, you give them a flag, and the first thing that they give up is on their rights, right? And one of these rights is to have a good life. And we give up on it the middle that we have nationality. It's amazing. It's like put a flag and that's it. We give up on everything.
That's a beautiful way to end this podcast. Like, let's not give up on our humanity. Absolutely. And it's interesting, this what you're speaking to is how we bring the global to the local. And how can we really locally build peace
And
together?
vice versa.
Yeah. Bits, step by step.
Yeah, piece by piece. Thank you very much, Eva.
Bring your peace to peace. Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for holding space with us. If this episode moved you, please support the Peace is Possible podcast by subscribing, sharing it with friends, or posting it online. Every ripple counts. We'll be back next month with another conversation that dives deep into what it truly means to activate peace within and around us. To support the vision behind Peace Activation, visit peaceactivation.org and follow along on social media. You'll find both Peace Activation and me, Eva Dalak, across all platforms. Until next time, may you meet yourself and others with peace.